All right, so it looks like we are live even. We'll quickly give the folks at least a couple of minutes to join in, and yeah, as soon
Okay,
as the chat is on fire, we can begin with this seminar.
sounds good.
I see that we're already live on LinkedIn, on YouTube. That's great. So, everyone joining, please mention where are you joining us from, and yeah, just 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 comment the city that you're joining from in the chat, and we'll be more than happy to know where you guys are joining us from. But yeah, on that note, Evan, where are you currently located?
So I'm in Culpeper, Virginia, actually a little town called Boston, Virginia.
All
So
right,
2 hours south of Washington, D.C.
that's cool. That's a good spot to be in, actually. Not too cold, not too hot, I assume.
Yeah, it's very nice. Very much out in the country. I was surprised how much country there is here.
That's amazing. Unfortunately, I can't say that because I'm joining from Chicago and it's already getting so cold over here. But yeah, that's awesome. That's very interesting to hear.
Imagine you get that lake effect out there.
Big
It'd be
time, and
brutal
there's
cold.
like yes, very cold, and there's like a wind tunnel in like almost every building that I walk into. So yeah, very fun to be around.
Yeah. I grew up in Idaho and it would snow about 6 months out of the year, so uh, didn't have humidity though, so that was nice.
Hmm, right. All right, I see a few folks turning up on LinkedIn. Yeah, anyone joining us right now, guys, just type where you are joining us from, and we'll be getting started in just a minute. All right, so I believe we are at 6:33, and it's a good time to get started. So on that note, thank you so much for doing this, Evan. Yes, I already see people starting like typing in the chat. Hey, hi, Delrose, is joining from DC. That's amazing. Um, okay, AP is asking a question. We'll definitely be doing a live Q&A, AP. So we are looking forward to your questions. Um, but yeah, as new people are joining in, do let us know where you're joining us from in the chat. And yeah, to quickly get us started, thank you so much for doing this event. We really appreciate you taking your time and helping our audience over here. Having said that, I believe with so much noise which is going on out there, we are going to be speaking on a very important topic that can help alleviate a lot of the problems that people are facing today. But we'll come back to O1. But before we even do so, I've been seeing your profile for the last couple of days and very impressed with the kind of pedigree and the experience that you bring to the table. But yeah, just to let everyone know, Evan has been an ex USCIS appeals officer, and he has more than 17 years of experience practicing law. But having said that, Evan, I would just love for you to introduce yourself and just share more about your journey with the audience over here.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I've worked in private practice with family-based firms, employment-based immigration firms, and then this period of time I was with the government. I was with the USCIS Administrative Appeals Office, and I loved that time there. I was there from 2012 to 2019. I adjudicated EB2 and EB3 cases, and then the last case type I did was the EB1A, the Extraordinary Ability Visa. And I'm sure I'll be sharing experiences I've had throughout that. Oftentimes I think, okay, I probably shouldn't share this, but here you go. So we'll see how it goes.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I can't even imagine the types of cases you would have like reviewed and what that entire journey would be like. I'm very personally very curious to much more deeper into your brain when it comes to that. But yeah, we will definitely be talking more about that. But yes, to get us started, I'll quickly introduce myself as well. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. This is Sohan. I am a data analytics manager for a company called Healthcare Service Corporation, and I have been helping Fortune 500 companies with their high-end data products for the past 5 years now. And something that I love doing after my 9 to 5 is over is helping everyone that we are seeing over here. So just helping people with their job search, with their immigration, and just navigating their journey abroad is something that I love talking about. So that brings me to this webinar, which we are going to be extensively talking about O1. So just to get us started, even the biggest question, let's assume someone is seeing this for the first time. What is the O1, and how would you explain the O1 visa to some layman who has never really heard about the specialty or the extraordinary visas out there?
Sure. Sometimes I refer to the O-1 visa as kind of the little brother, or I guess you say little sister to the EB-1A, the Extraordinary Ability Permanent Visa. So the major difference is the EB-1A leads to the green card. The O-1A has virtually the same framework, but that's a temporary non-immigrant visa. So you would obtain that for 3 years. It doesn't require a job offer, and it basically allows for a lot more flexibility than something like the H-1B visa. But in a lot of ways, people hear the term extraordinary ability and they think, okay, I've got to show that I've done something awesome. For example, one time I had someone who had climbed the Himalayas, and that
Wow.
is an extraordinary achievement, right? But the regulations require specific details about how you show that you're extraordinary. And so that's kind of the nuance.
Absolutely makes sense. And just to just to dive a little bit deeper into exactly what you just explained over there, even um, I would just love to understand that, hey, when we talk about extraordinary ability, is it more limited to artists and scientists and maybe research professionals, or is it open to everyone, like technical professionals like me or business professionals and so on and so
Yeah,
forth?
yeah, great question. Yeah, it's open to any of those other aspects. The business professionals in those in tech, those are really good fits for this. When I was adjudicating EB1s, I did recognize that certain fields and certain career paths do have a harder time sometimes establishing what's required. For example, actors, part of the requirement is you have to show you've risen to the very top of your field. And so some of that just becomes more challenging depending on the field type that you're in. But there's this case called Kazarian that some people may have heard of. It lays out this two-part test where you first have to meet three requirements. That is like the initial evidentiary, um, basically that's kind of the gatekeeper. You meet that, you open the gate to continue forward to what they call a final merits determination. And then
Right.
at that stage, the officer views all the evidence and they say, does this rise to the level that Congress envisioned when they wrote this into law, which refers to um, extraordinary ability is defined as someone who's risen to the very top of their field that
Mhm.
has also sustained national or international acclaim. The criteria go towards those aspects of a claim. And so this is where it gets to be a little tricky because it's not just how famous are you. Thankfully, that's not the requirement. the regulations don't define a claim. And so basically you look at this as, how do others recognize you as an expert in the field? The more recognition you have, the better chance you have of succeeding.
Got it. And I would definitely love to understand about the various criteria that you briefly touched upon over there. But let's say if someone is on an F1 visa or an H-1B visa, why should they be going for something like an O-1 in the first place?
Well, one of the nice things to go for an O-1 is that you don't have to have the rigidity of, staying with the same employer. Gives you a lot more flexibility in terms of the O-1 can even allow you to have multiple contracts with other employers. And so also because it lasts for 3 years, it just gives you a different mindset where you feel like you're not quite pinned into that same job. H-1Bs, you can do things like changes with employers as well, but this just opens a lot more flexibility. You don't have to do the labor testing like you would have to do for an H-1B or for a perm case, which is like a regular green card case through an employer.
Right. So basically, what I hear over there is like it is acting as a much better safeguard as compared to being on an H-1B visa. And there are a lot of the drawbacks that come with an H-1B can actually go away when someone is on a visa like O-1. So that makes perfect sense, actually. Um, Okay, circling back to what you were discussing. So why don't you lay out what are the criteria that are required for an O1? And while you're answering, like I know that's such a brief question. While you're answering that, why don't you share some of your experiences as to say what are the best criteria that people can be aiming for, or maybe some of the cases that you have reviewed that actually worked out and got the O1 finally.
Sure. Yeah. So a lot of these criteria have kind of a built-in aspect of a claim, like there's published material about you in published or in professional publications or in major media. Generally, it's harder to show that in major media. They want to see like it's in the New York Times or something that has a very big following. There's scholarly articles that you write and that you get published in your field. Sometimes the nuances there can be, excuse me, depending on your field, engineers don't typically publish like a researcher would. And so sometimes you may run into issues with officers who say, well, we see you've published, but your citation level is not the level we want to see.
Mhm.
Well, those are just some nuances with these case types. But some of the other criteria you can meet are showing that you've performed a leading or critical role for an organization that has a distinguished reputation. A leading role is more kind of the managerial aspects. Who have you supervised? How have you uh, basically led out in the company? Whereas the critical role, they want to see that you have had a significant impact on the objectives of the company. And so that one can be a little bit more challenging to meet, but when you do meet that, it shows that you've risen to the very top of your field. And high salary is another one that goes towards showing you have risen to the top of your field. And all of these kind of come back to some level of recognition. With high salary, you're basically showing the government, well, my employer recognizes what I bring to the table, and so they're willing to pay me at this high level. Some of the ones that can be challenging to meet are the awards criteria and the membership. They have certain aspects to them. The awards one, it says lesser nationally or internationally recognized awards for excellence in the field. So it's not to the level of like a Pulitzer Prize, or these major things, but it still has to have this national component to it. It can't just be your employer gave you the Employee of the Year award. That can go towards showing that you've played a critical role for them. But the awards, it can be a challenging one. The other aspect that I brought up is with memberships. That one has several parts to it, and I apologize, I'm going on and on about this, but the memberships require that you've received this membership in an association that requires outstanding achievements to basically get in, and that you were let in by those who are internationally or nationally renowned experts. So it's like you have to connect the dots several ways with those. Sometimes what I will advise people to do is if we think we can't meet every aspect of that, we'll focus on the ones that we can, and then we'll talk about the others in the final merits analysis and discuss why this shows you have a significant amount of recognition in the field, and then um, you take it from there. But each case type presents its own kind of balance. Some cases demonstrate that someone is has risen to the top of their field, and then others have more of this acclaim aspect. A lot of times that happens for people who are in publishing and researching and things like that. So I would say the hardest one to meet is the original contributions of major significance. And in my view, I do think USCIS goes a little bit too far on that one, but that's, topic for another day. We can dive into that if you want to, but they require that you show that your contributions have been implemented throughout the field, and
Mhm.
that is just uh, a very high burden to meet. Oftentimes they'll look at, well, have you filed patents, or um, uncovered some really key aspect in your research that will benefit the country, and things like that. So as for some of the cases I've worked on, I'll say some of the most interesting EB1 cases I are, and some I don't know if I'm going to get in trouble with the government. I don't think they can do anything now. I'm not working for them, but I had one case where someone uh, was claiming to be an individual of extraordinary ability for their research in as a UFO expert,
Oh my.
and um, just interesting cases like that. So there's a wide variety of cases. It adjudicated a lot of cases, whether it was of volleyball players at the top of their field. There's a wide variety. So with O-1s, a lot of times you can use the O-1 as even a stepping stone toward the EB1A. It's helping you understand what the requirements are. And in many ways, I think it's helpful for people to understand the aspects of the O-1 are going to be helpful for you to work towards anyway, because it's about your growth in your career that you're working so hard for as well. And so if you have kind of this growth mindset, you're learning about these things that you can do to network and to establish yourself more as an expert in the field. That can really set you up for success, even if it takes you a few times to finally get the visa.
I love that, and thank you so much for breaking it down so simply and so beautifully. I have been like learning about the O1 for quite a while now, but how you explained is like one of the best explanation I've come across so far. But thank you so much for that. I see so many questions in the chat. We'll definitely answer them in a moment. But yeah, something that really stuck out for me. In that entire thing, Evan, was that growth mindset that you spoke about, and it is only going to help you excel further and further in any field that you are currently working in. So thanks for sharing that. To quickly take it to like take it beyond that, I'll be very curious to understand, Evan, what are like this was the profile building stage, which is definitely the most important one. But if we are breaking down the various stages in getting an O1, how would you break it down? Maybe from profile building till applying and so on and so forth. And also, can you give some tentative timelines for how much time each stage typically takes in your experience?
Sure. Yeah. So it's really going to depend on what your background is. So the first thing I would suggest is look at what these 8 criteria are, and I've discussed most of them. The Yeah, actually, well, the one that I didn't discuss was judging or reviewing the work of others. The things that you should start with are really trying to find what are the three things that you are most likely to be able to qualify for. Because what you don't want is you don't want to leave an opening for the officer to say, well, you met two of them, but this third one is weak, or maybe you tried to meet four and two of the four just had some weaknesses, and the officer issues a request for evidence and sets you back. It's not to say that people can't move forward and get an approval after a case is denied, but from a former adjudicator's perspective, it can cause some issues because I'll look in a case and see, oh, they've already applied before. I'm kind of curious, well, why was it denied the last time, right? And so it does have this moment where you almost have to fight with it. No, I'm keeping an open mind, um, and people can overcome that, and certainly they do. But you really want to put your best foot forward with this. I tend to tell people that this is kind of like preparing for the biggest job interview of your life. But the obviously the job interview is for you to obtain this visa. But when you go into a job interview, you're preparing yourself to what are the things that I want to focus on as far as my experience. How is my experience going to line up with what they want?
Mm-hmm.
And this is a similar thing with these regulations. They've laid out what is needed, and so the more you can do to recognize that, and to basically be building your portfolio just as you normally would, as if you were going to transfer to another position, and position yourself well for that other employer. You want to say, okay, I do have experience doing X, Y, or Z in this case. So one general aspect I talk with people about is just to let them focus on, or have them focus on, networking a lot more. The more you network, the more opportunities come your way. The more you're invited to be on someone's podcasts, or or you're able to review the work of others. A lot of times people graduate with their PhD, and then they can all of a sudden be judging someone else's dissertation, right? And so the more you're aware of these other opportunities and how they line up with the criteria, that gets you in the first the first phases. Because if you can't meet three out of the necessary requirements, you can't go further. Then the next steps would be kind of the procedural aspects of this, which is what differs from the EB1A, in that you do need to have some contractual things laid out. You need to have an agent filing for you, or they're both still self petitions, but the O-1 does have this agent and itinerary component to it. So in essence, you kind of can think of that in terms of, that's like a safeguard for the government to just be confident that you're coming here to do what you say you're going to do. Then at the green card stage, it's kind of like the government is saying, well, we're confident you have risen to this top of your field, and you're going to help the economy in certain ways. And so we're going to grant your green card. We don't need to see the itinerary of what you're doing. Right. And so those are some good conversations to have with an attorney. Sometimes, attorneys can be the agent in certain ways. So those kind of procedural things are good things to talk through once you've already started to establish, okay, I think I'm ready to move forward. I think I meet three out of these eight requirements.
Got it. Thank you so much for breaking that down as well. Yeah.
Mhm.
I just to quickly speak about that last part that you spoke about over there. These are some of the questions that I keep getting all the time as well, and I would say there are multiple ways, and there is also have at the very same time there is a lot of vagueness in what people's understanding of this is. So if we can break down that very last part about what are the pathways to get an O1? Is it through self-petition? Is it through an agent? Is it through opening your own business, or is it through an employer as well? So, what are the options that someone can have?
Yeah, good question. So you can do it through an employer, where the employer sponsors you for that, similar to like an H-1B. And you can do it as a self-petitioner, well, where you are essentially kind of like an independent contractor in terms of you are uh, contracting with several employers. And so you basically line up the work that you're planning to do and the period of time that that will take. And then the agent um, uh, can be, like I said, an attorney or someone who's uh, in the in the position of regularly acting as an agent, right? So um, anyway, those are some of the major points to that. So in that way, it does have this kind of procedural hurdles to go through, but that also can add to the flexibility of it. You know, the visa's valid for 3 years, and so you do have some flexibility in how these things are structured, and even it can open you up to new opportunities that you don't have to turn around and constantly be telling the government exactly here's the way this changed uh, or so. Um, that what I said earlier, where this is kind of a stepping stone toward the EB1, um, those kind of um, details, the procedural details, that's more of the headache side of this. The trade-off is that instead of having to deal with that, you just have a much higher burden to meet as far as getting your case approved for the EB1A. So in my view, I would say it's worth the headache because O1s have a much higher approval rate. And the there are some differences in the way the regulations are written. We can talk about that if you'd like in a moment, but well, I'll just say it briefly. In the EB1As, the regulations start by saying you have to meet these initial evidentiary requirements, and that's one of the reasons why then this Kazarian framework came out. That then they said, okay, you met the initial requirements. Now show us that that evidence shows that you're at the very top of your field. With
Right.
the O1 language, it just is basically meet. You need to meet 3 out of these 8
Mhm.
requirements, right?
Right. Yeah, that's an excellent point as well. Like it's a great stepping stone to the EB1A and then ultimately to a green card as well. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. I know people are waiting to get the questions answered, but I just have one last question for you, Evan. But yeah, before I get to that question, to all the people who are live right now, we'll be answering your questions in just a minute. So yes, that was actually so. Please start typing your questions in the chat in the first place, and we'll be coming back to that. But just to answer one last question, which I have for you, Evan, is given the current uncertainty with the H-1B and so much is going on in the news, do you think an O-1 can be a good choice at this point of time? And at the very same time, how do you think the trend in the O-1 visa applications going up big time going forward?
I'm sorry, I missed part of the audio on that last part of that question. Can you repeat just that last part?
Absolutely. So with the entire H-1B thing going on, do you have a suggestion that hey, is it a good time to apply for an O-1? And at the very same time, do you believe that there could be a trend or an increase in the number of O-1 applications, maybe 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line? What are your thoughts on that?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. So yes, I'll answer that second part first. It is very likely that there will be an increase in the petitions filed, and I will just make a comment on that generally because oftentimes people look at, well, we're always as attorneys trying to decide, well, what is going on with the approval rates
Mhm.
for certain visa types, particularly the EB1s recently. Um, and it's very difficult to know because we don't have a good assessment of, well, what were all the applications like that were filed, right?
Right.
But anytime you have a surge of petitions, there's something that goes on internally, is that USCIS is continually looking at how do we have enough officers to handle these case types. And so
Mhm.
sometimes there may be issues about new officers coming on to adjudicate them. But another thing happens is that the more that a person has on their plate, uh, and the more applications they have to compare against other applications, it is very difficult not to compare them. And so sometimes I'll talk with people, and even today, someone asked me if this is kind of like being graded on the curve, and I kind of said, yeah, it really is in a way, because um, you know, as much as an officer tries to keep an open mind about the cases they're working on, if they look at it just an enormously uh, qualified person in the morning, and then another case comes in later in the day that's still a good case, it's just so easy to compare the two and to have a different viewpoint that way. So that can be a challenge. But what I would say is all of these things are outside of your control. So what I would focus on for yourself is what is in my control, and what that is how much you can grow in the industry and develop yourself professionally and put yourself in the strongest position. The more of these criteria that you can meet, the stronger uh, application you'll have, and the better chances of success you'll have. Even if you get the O-1 approved, I would suggest you continually be building your portfolio up, your expertise in the industry, so that you can qualify for the EB-1. But yes, with the H-1B process now going to that, there is a lot of uncertainty there, and there will continue to be uncertainty as that goes through this litigation process, as
Mhm.
well as the notice and comment rulemaking, which is what they're doing to basically put this in kind of a more weighted type of lottery. So those that have a higher salaried type position, they're going to have a higher likelihood of getting approved for the H-1B. So
Right.
yes, I do think the O-1 is a very good option for a lot of people. Um, Whether it becomes more challenging, whether the approval rates start to dip, we won't know for quite some time.
Mhm.
And but what I would caution people against is you really want to find a sweet spot of preparing for this and moving forward, in terms of, I would have you continue to prepare until you're ready for it, and you feel like you meet the criteria, and then meeting with an attorney can help you understand that further. So in other words, don't rush into it. If so many people rush into it, then the officers are going to get a lot of cases where they're going to say, okay, they don't really meet that third criterion. I'm going to have to deny the case. And what happens is the more officers are starting to deny cases, well, it does get into your head. When I started with the AAO, one of the comments that I was told initially was, well, we don't approve many cases here. And I said, well, why not? You have a quota? What's going on? And but I think there were a lot of cases filed that still were not the strongest of cases. But what it is it almost reinforced for the officers of, we're in denial mode. We're just if I have to guess which template I'm choosing, I'm probably going to go for the denial or the request for evidence side.
Right.
So anyway, that was a very long way of saying, um, I do think this is a very good option for people, and it certainly is a good idea to meet with an attorney and see where you are, and what it is that you could do to improve your chances as far as qualifying.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge and your experiences over the event. Yeah, I guess it is a great time to begin with the questions. As you're answering the questions, everyone who are live right now, please start typing your questions and we'll be answering them one by one. But yeah, on that note, Evan, the first question is in front of you. What answer do we have for Ricky M over here?
Yeah, so good. This is a really good question. So the $100,000 fee is currently in litigation, and that will take some time uh, to be sorted out. And so right now, the collection hasn't started for this. So yes, I would suggest taking care of that visa stamping before these types of things get rolled out. When we first started hearing about this challenge, we thought, oh no, the people that are outside the US, they're not going to be able to return. But then, additional guidance came out for that. So with any of these, you know, issues like this, and because things are likely going to be changing in the near future. We don't exactly know how long it will take for this litigation to go forward, but I would recommend having a consultation with an attorney just before you do something like, traveling outside of the U.S., and be aware of several things that you would that you should be aware of before you take those steps.
Got it.
Okay, so, and or do you want me to read these out loud, or are these the questions showing up?
I believe, yeah,
Show,
we can just like maybe do like a overview that, hey, TV Singh is asking, is it
yeah,
possible to get O-1 as a founder? And then, yeah, we can just
okay.
ask.
Yeah, so the question is, if they have $1 million in funding for a startup at the initial stage, is it possible to get O-1 as a founder? So there's nothing that restricts having a business in the US.
Hmm.
Um, there are certain times when I worked at the AAO that even people would petition for themselves as far as through the regular perm process. And I
Right.
remember having some conversations with my supervisors where they would say, "Well, you can't do that." And I said, "Well, where does it say you can't do that?" Right?
Hmm.
And so there's a number of these things that that are not spelled out in immigration law. And so what I would suggest is really having an in-depth conversation with an immigration attorney on that, whether it makes more sense to do, an e-investor visa as opposed to the O-1. So that really depends on your background and whether you are going to meet 3 out of the 10 criteria, because you certainly, I mean, any part of the investment you're making with the attorney's fees you're covering, but also the time that you might lose by going down one path that might be better for you than another. You might even be able to uh, um, go go through the EB5 category and find that is better suited for you. So, good question. I would say that one is best dealt with in a consultation with an attorney. But yeah, there's several options that you have in that way, and certainly, having graduated from Cornell, that also um, is a big plus. I will say, just generally with these case types as well, what you're trying to show the officer is basically how impressive you are. What impresses the officer, right? And in line with the criteria. And with something like this, I would just say you have several options open to you. I'm not sure if O-1 is the best option, but anyway, those are my thoughts on that one.
It's a good breakdown. Yep.
Okay, so one critical aspect for O1 or for EB1 for recent graduates is the lack of critical role. Students generally have academic or research-oriented profiles. Could you cover aspects surrounding this? Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I will say, USCIS has taken some good measures over the past few years to make this more accessible to people in this situation. When I worked for the AAO, routinely I would hear officers or supervisors talking about how, people early on in their career, they can't establish the sustained acclaim that's required for either the EB1 or the O-1. And USCIS has recently come out over the past few years with policy memos where they, well, in in their policy manual, they talk about how no, even people early on in their careers can meet these qualifications as long as they meet 3 out of the 10. So what I would say at that point is look to pivoting towards these other criteria to have published material about you, to look at, depending on your career field, if it makes sense to work towards writing and publishing scholarly articles, or judging, reviewing the work of others. I will say, when I talk about you needing to impress the officers, what we want you to do is not just view these criteria as, well, what's the easiest one I can do so I can check the box? Because that's going to come back around when they say, okay, you've now met 3 out of the 10 or 3 out of the 8 criteria for O1s. Now let's talk about how impressive those were. And so if you have 2 instances of judging that you really, your heart wasn't in it, and it can be detrimental to you in that way. And so some of the other ones that can be challenging early on are, like the critical role or leading role, is high salary. Oftentimes, early in your career, it's harder for you to have that push for an employer to pay you that high salary. But if you look at some of the other things that are open to you, this is really where almost your almost like your business or entrepreneurial mindset can come in, is where you start to say, okay, do I have original contributions that I can provide to the country? As I talked about, that one can be a difficult one to meet, but the more you do things like that, the more you're able to position yourself to then start to say, oh, as I've been doing those things, now I am starting to perform a critical role for an employer. And so that's why I say, some of this is really um, kind of going towards the growth that you're able to have uh, in your industry. With the way social media is nowadays, you can start doing things like posting on LinkedIn, and that might lead you to a role or an invitation where someone says, hey, I saw that you did this work. Will you now review my work that I'm publishing in the scholarly article? And maybe that brings you into the path of, okay, well, that opened the door for you to start writing scholarly articles or something like that. So there's a number of these that I would say you can go towards. The membership one is a good one to look to, but like I said, that one is kind of this multifaceted. So that one can be challenging as well. I would also say it's helpful to look at what awards can you try for. The more you apply for awards, that's helping you in your career as you develop yourself. And then hopefully over time you're nominated for some things, and you can kind of build up your portfolio. Okay, H-1B approved June of this year. Employment ended on July 31st, utilized the 150-day unemployment period. C was terminated under change of status to H-1B effective October 1st. What are my options to transfer or retain my H-1B status? Okay, they have come out with some new guidance that you can transfer. Now let me just make sure. Yeah, so yeah, this is a good question. Um, so so just speaking generally about visa types, to do a change of status or extension of status, you need to file for that before your status expires. And so um, in this period, but sometimes there's ways that you can gain time back with an H-1B. So with this question, and I know nobody likes to hear this answer, but I would suggest you have a consultation with an attorney on this, mostly just to map out exactly how everything went down when you've traveled outside of the country, That would be the safest. And I would suggest trying to have a consultation as soon as you can just to get on top of that. Okay, you mentioned having a leading or critical role in an organization as a criterion. Can you clarify if the role can be classified as critical without the leading aspect attached to it and vice versa? Yes, and I'll have this conversation often with attorneys as I review EB1As. The the issue here, so there's a this is one of those things that you can go back and forth on different aspects of this, and so I'll talk about things for you to consider on both sides. Um, on one hand, if you focus solely on the critical role, um, be, um, the worry is, well, if USCIS isn't convinced of that, then even though you had a leading role, but you just didn't bring that up, the risk is that they deny that aspect of it and they don't allow you to go on to the final merits of the case. On the flip side, if you let's say you have both a leading and a critical role, and you claim both of them, but your leading role in terms of your leadership capacity is maybe you supervise like two individuals and it's kind of at a lower threshold. um, One of the risks is that then when the officer gets to the final merits, they kind of disregard the critical role part, and they say, oh, and your leading role shows you've only supervised two individuals at this level. We don't think that's as impressive as is required. And so that can be a challenge. And so what I would, you can do one or the other. When you do the leading role, they want you to show evidence showing the hierarchy and where your position fits, who you're overseeing, what your capacity is in that way. And so what I would say is really have just I don't know, just assess in your mind which of the two is more impressive to you. If you know, and 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 really have the understanding of you can apply for both. And actually, the safest way is most times to request both, and then in the final merits analysis, assess why both are valuable. The leadership aspect, even if you are just supervising or managing two people, that can, you can still pull out details showing, well, that is uh, a very key part of this component or division that I'm part of. So yes, you can do both. They don't have to be tied like that, but really to separate them, the one is kind of this leadership aspect of who it is that you're over, and then the other part is what are you doing to move the company forward and help us meet our principal objectives.
Got it.
Okay, with the previous approved EB2 NIW, is the criteria transferable to an O-1? So a good question. This is one that I oftentimes refer to the EB2 NIW as also being a stepping stone toward the EB1 case. In that way, it can also be a stepping stone toward the O-1. But there is some major differences, and I'll say from my time at the AAO, there's some key distinctions, especially in the support letters, that you don't want to just reuse all of the evidence you had for the EB2 NIW, because a lot of times, the theme for that is that you are showing that you have a proposed endeavor and that you are well situated to advance that endeavor. Um, and so it's talking about, there's still an aspect of what you've already done, but a big portion of that is what are you going to do in the future? That can be detrimental when you get to the O-1 or the EB1, because you have to show there that you've already risen to the top of your field. And so if you have these letters that say, I'm confident they will continue and they are going to do these amazing things in the future, well, the USCIS has a nicely written out blurb, we used to call them. It's just a paragraph that they copy and paste in, and and so sometimes with what I do in advising people, I feel like a lot of my approach is to tell them we're trying to minimize or triggering language that they're going to cut out and paste in your request for evidence. So yes, these can be useful, but what I would say is you still need to look at the evidence you've prepared. It still needs to be repositioned, but yes, it can help definitely in an O1. Okay, working for a community college where I'm the first international employee seeking sponsorship. What are the options I have in this situation where the institution might come under cap exempt? Um, so yeah, so what I would say, well, so there's a lot that we don't know with with the H-1B things going on. I do have some I have some personal insights just on my own, which I was very well. I'll try to say as neutral as I can. I can see both sides of things with the H-1B aspect of this, but still there are aspects of the way it came out that caused me to scratch my head. Okay, and this a national security issue. Um, similar, I had similar thoughts when I heard that the government was uh, stating no longer people that are born in the U.S. Are going to be deemed citizens, right? So, um, but anyway, to this point, I think what I would suggest is um, I would be preparing for several options, like a plan A, B, and C. With um, with the topic we're talking about with an O-1, I really do think that one is a very good one for people to start working towards, because you just never know where the detours in your path are going to come from. So um, I think with this one, there's there's additional questions I have, which are, I mean, sometimes it makes sense for people to even go further on in their education while they're building up their O-1 portfolio, if they're into researching. Um, so that's something that's more of a somewhere like a community college. Um, so I don't know. I think with that one, I would need some almost some back and forth with the individual. But so with that one, I would say hopefully you can glean a few thoughts I shared there, but that one might be a good one to have a consultation with as well.
Of course. And I'm so sorry to interrupt over here, Kunal and Evan, but we just have 7 minutes left. So please, everyone seeing this live, ask all your questions and we'll try to answer as many of them. But yeah, please start typing your questions in the chat. Okay.
Sounds good. And I apologize, I'm so long-winded sometimes. So
No,
I'm willing to stay a little bit later if you're up for that too. So it's
absolutely.
up to you.
And yeah,
So, okay,
I,
I'll try and answer this a little bit quicker. So is the government shutdown affecting the 60-day grace period for those of employment? So there's not a pause for, immigration requirements, unfortunately. And so, um, yeah, I would just say we're in a difficult time here with the government shutdown. Um, let's, yeah, um,
let's keep it
don't really
live.
have a great answer for that one. So the next one, can one invest EB5 stipulated amount in the startup of a CEO friend startup to be eligible? Yeah, so the main thing you need to be careful with, and I'll just preface this with I'm not an EB5 expert, but I was always cautious about uh, venturing into the EB5 world, just because there can be there's a very fine line between improprieties that can happen, and so I would say be careful with something like this. Um, because what you don't want to do is, the government is going to be looking at things like, are you just transferring the money from your CEO friend to your account so it shows that you've got funding there, and then you're siphoning things out and aspect of things. So What I would say is definitely you'll want an attorney representing you with an EB-5 case. There are a lot of ways that that can go badly, and even some criminal things that can go south. So, but that said, keep in mind I'm not an EB-5 specialist. So, but those are my insights on that. Okay.
All right. Yep.
Okay. How can I build my profile given I'm an
Software
STE?
development engineer. Okay.
Okay, and my apologies for the, I'm not great with acronyms. So SEE.
So basically, I assume Harshvardhan is working in the software domain. So like SD is basically like a software development engineer, and
Okay,
so yeah,
okay,
he
software development.
like for
Okay,
that profile.
sure. So these are cases in which it's not to say you can't succeed with this. A lot of times people do, but what you really want to be doing is trying to determine what are the things that you can do internally, for example, playing a critical role for your employer and things like that, that don't require so much outward facing things like the writing scholarly articles and things like that. So working towards obtaining a high salary, finding ways to be so efficient that you are saving your employer a significant amount of money to show that you're playing a critical role. That also leads you to uh, being in a good position for a higher salary, right? And I would also say look for ways in which you can do some outward facing things, whether it's trying to have people become aware of what you're doing and collaborating with others. It's probably harder to do things like judging the work of others, but it's not impossible. So I would say read over the criteria and just find ways to be creative. And this just brings in some basic entrepreneurial aspects of this is think outside of the normal things that you would come up with and try to explore what are some of the ways that you can build up your portfolio, in these other ways. Okay, next, not
Let's.
seeing the next.
Yeah.
Okay, I attended 2 interviews today for AI engineer roles, and both employers mentioned they aren't recruiting F1 OPT or H-1B candidates, citing budget concerns related to the recent 100,000 wage rule. How can I best explain to employers that this requirement doesn't apply to F1? Well, I mean, I think that's the best way to explain it is that it's not applicable to F1 um, and even you know where change of status applications can go forward. So um, I think at this point I think the fear is more, or the concern is more probably the uncertainty of it, and the fact that they just can't imagine having the thought of being on the hook for a $100,000 wage rule. I would suggest continuing to look for um, other roles, because it's not like you can force somebody to take the concerns out of their mind, right? So what I would say is don't lose hope for your career path and moving forward, but educating people is really a key part of this. I don't know. So in some ways, I'd like to educate people about my thoughts on the legalities of what's going on and some of the hurdles that are still there for what's out there. But at the same time, I don't have any idea how the litigation is going to pan out or things like that. So yeah, that's what I would say on that one. Okay,
Of
the
course.
next one. Let's see.
I'm so sorry, man. I'll just quickly pause over there by and please feel free to answer the question. But I'll quickly be sharing my screen because there are 7:30 CST over here, and if like this session was helpful and you need additional guidance, which I'm sure everyone needs when it comes to the O1 visa, and you want to speak to Evan in more detail, I'll be quickly sharing my screen, and you can just scan this QR code, and it will directly guide you to the Manifest Law website, and you can book your consult over there. But yeah, I'm so sorry, Evan. You were answering that question over there as well.
Oh, that's fine. I think it was actually the same question that I had looked at before. So, um, yeah, I don't see. Are there any other questions anyone wanted to ask? Okay. So you're asking when the government will reopen the perm is still pending. Yeah, so the Department of Labor is closed while the government is closed. So I'm not sure if you're asking when the government will reopen. Yeah, I don't have any details on that, but basically the things that were filed will be picked back up. What was pending before will be pending still.
Makes sense. Yeah, well, I believe that unfortunately brings us to the end of the session. But Evan, I really have to say thank you so much. The plethora of knowledge that you were able to share today, I'm sure it was so helpful to everyone. I'm already seeing so many people thanking you in the chat right there. But yeah, I personally would love to thank you as well, because I learned at least 3 or 4 new things when it comes to the O1 visa. And thank you so much for taking the time answering everything in such detail. And I really wish you all the best. And I hope you have a great night. But thank you so much. You're really making a
Yeah.
big impact over here with helping students.
Sounds good. Well, thanks so much. It was nice to be with you. And just if we can be of service in any way, just let us know.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, guys, definitely